Hello.
Welcome. I'm Morgan Taylor. I am the co-chair of the Buckles Technology Committee, and I'm also the head of Adult Services at the Louis Bay Second Library in Hawthorne. So thank you guys all for coming today. We're going to start this morning off with a panel. Here are all of our panelists with name tags in front of them. Wait, panelists. We will have time for question and answer at the end. And then once we've gone through that, if you have your laptop, you can start building a website if you want to, practicing on the different platforms. The panelists will be here to consult if you have individual questions or want some help. And the committee members, wave your hand if you're a Buckles committee member. All of the committee members can help you out too if you need help from someone else. So, and we don't have a microphone, so we are going to project for you. And if you can't hear us, put your hand to your ear obnoxiously, and we will speak up. Okay? So, hi, panelists.
Hi.
I'm Morgan. So, my first question for all of you is, what is your preferred platform for a website?
We're going to go. That's great. Hi everyone, my name is Ben. Nice to meet you. I work for Millet Marketing Company, and generally when we are building websites for libraries, there's two platforms we like to recommend, and it really depends on one, your budget, and also what your ongoing budget is going to be for the website. So the first one that we recommend, if you want to spend as little money as possible, is generally a Squarespace website. Squarespace is a platform that you don't really have to update it too much. They handle that for you. The security is kind of done for you. It's drag and drop. It's pretty easy to work with. The other platform that we work with, which I'm sure somebody else is going to mention later, is WordPress, which is very customizable and you can do basically anything you want. The only issue with WordPress is that you do need to maintain it, and if there isn't somebody on staff that can do that for you, you generally need to hire somebody to do that. So that is my question. That's my answer to your question. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I can't say I have a recommended website CMS builder because we at our library use Wix. And we used it because our director had a vision of what she wanted the website to look like, and we were able to achieve that very easily using Wix. It is easy to use, they do have security and whatnot, but we fully know that we have to make sure we keep it maintained and updated.
And if you don't know, CMS stands for Content Management System.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm from the Buckles office. So I would have to say my favorite platform is to hand code everything and create a website from scratch. But if I had a go-to content management system, I would say it would probably be WordPress. It's easily customizable. You can find a lot of great themes out there that you can easily customize. There's one called Aloutto right now that seems to be really popular. So it's easy to find the information about the CMS and then do your back-end work yourself.
Hi, John from Renaissance Web Solutions. I primarily build all my sites through WordPress. That is my suggested if you're going to hire somebody to if you're going to hire a developer, most likely you will hire somebody building with WordPress. In-house, you would want to go with something. If you start with WordPress, you'll probably get overwhelmed. Because it looks good and you're like, well, I don't understand how to do it. So you would go with something like Ben has suggested with Squarespace if you're going to build it yourself. But hiring a developer, they most likely will suggest WordPress.
Hi everyone, I'm Radwa Ali. I'm the director of Westbury Public Library, and I really miss you guys. I'm happy to be here. So I have built a site for Hackensack long ago, and I use WordPress. And I agree that WordPress is very versatile and you can do a lot with it, but there is a very, very high learning curve. So if this is your first time doing a website, I would not recommend it if you don't have that talent pool in your staff. With WordPress, I actually found a front-end editor that worked with it. There's a lot of them out there. So the one I found was called PageLines. It's a little bit, I mean, I haven't used it in a long time, obviously, since I've been Hackensack, but it brought that front end drag and drop functionality to WordPress and made it a lot easier to build that site. And there are tools out there. They do cost some money. They have a monthly or an annual subscription, but they make WordPress a little bit easier to use and not quite so back end, just more front end. My favorite tool for website building that I really enjoyed was a Pagoda, and that was Wix. Wix, and I've tried out Squarespace on my own just to play around with it. The Wix, Squarespace is very, very easy and it's gorgeous and it looks very, very nice. The problem with Squarespace is that you're very limited in how your site is going to turn out, how it's going to look. They're very, very stringent with the templates, and there's not much room for customization. With Wix, if you have a vision for what you want, it's very, very easy to create that site exactly how you want it to look, which is what I did for Pagoda, although it's changed since now. But it's what I did for that. I had a very, very certain vision, and with Wix, it had all the tools to make that happen. It took more time probably than it was taking with Squarespace, but in the end, I got what I wanted. It was a lot easier to use than WordPress. So I would recommend Wix. Go for it.
All right. Hi, I'm Stephen from Princeton Public Library, and I pretty much just have to second everything that everybody just said. But especially looking at those two tiers almost, which is at Squarespace, Wix sort of level, and then just above it, WordPress. WordPress being more complicated, but you have more power. But Squarespace and Wix, you can create beautiful websites for much cheaper, and it's just much more like on rails, much more guided type of process. So those are definitely the two best options that I recommend.
And if I could just add something, I don't know about I have used WordPress and Squarespace, but Wix has a great thing. Whenever you go to do something, they have a help right when you click on it. Like if you want to add a video and you're not sure how to do it, there's a help button right there that gives you instructions as well as shows you a short little video on the steps you have to go through. So there is a learning curve, but I think they do a good job of trying to make it easy for a first-time website builder to know all the steps that you have to go through to get something on your website.
Wix also has, on top of their core functionality, they have a lot of great, what's it called, the app library, or there's additional apps that you could get. Some of them are free, some of them require a small payment, but you can add even more functionality to your website. That I made use of very heavily for Pagoda site back when I did Pagoda site.
How did you think Wix worked responsibly? Though I've always found Wix sites to not work.
Okay, so that was definitely a thing. So I basically had, it was a pain in the butt, I won't lie to you, it was not pleasant. So with Wix, at least back like 2 years ago when I first did this, you basically were able to do your desktop site the way you wanted it to, and then you were able to click a button and see how it would look in mobile or tablet version. But then what you could do is then you could go ahead and adjust the tablet mobile version to how you wanted it to look. So it required more work up front because you had to actually change the button size, change the picture, and do some changes, at first. But once you did that, it was done. It was fine.
Do you think maybe when people are building in Wix, they don't know that functionality exists? Because I find when I see most Wix sites, they don't look great on a phone or a tablet.
Well, we're all librarians, so we should do some research. And I mean, it's pretty clear. You look on it, it's fairly clear if you look to go through the tutorial when you're first doing it.
Right.
It shows you here's where you go to do the mobile, here's where you go to do that. So,
I may have a slanted view as a web developer. Right? Wix is like,
well,
that's
we
the
are
first thing I say to
librarians.
everybody. I say stay away from Wix.
It's a good idea whenever you're starting any kind of new platform that you really take the time and do the tutorials and watch the videos and go beyond their site that offer those tutorials. If you go on YouTube, there are tons of people out there. If you just do a search for anything that you're looking for, you'll find tons of videos out there. People really offering their perspective, maybe an easier way of doing it. Definitely look into the YouTube tutorials and then also the company's tutorials.
There's one other thing I wanted to just mention about WordPress. There's going to be a new update coming to WordPress soon called the Gutenberg update, and that's actually going to allow people to have a drag and drop editor coming out of the box with it, which should hopefully make things a little bit easier.
I think that's before the end of the year.
Yeah, it's where
You can try it now.
yeah, you're able to try. You can test it out. So if anybody today wants to test out the Gutenberg, you can. But the drag and drop editor, I forget which one you guys mentioned before.
Page lines?
Page lines, yeah. Aloutto is another one.
One of them.
Divi is one that I actually really like.
Yeah,
Very, very popular. Divi is also great because you can get a lifetime license for it, which means you don't have to pay every year to maintain and upgrade it. But yeah, it's just something to keep in mind with WordPress. It's difficult now, but it hopefully should get a little bit easier in the future.
And also, there's way more tools than just the ones that we mentioned. If you Google drag and drop CMS, you're gonna find a lot out there.
They're not all built.
They're not all
equally, though.
great, they're not all awesome,
Yeah.
but you can go to, like, you can just try them out. You know, most of them will have a 2-week free trial. Make an account, try it out, play around with it, and you might find one that's different from what we mentioned that you like and that'll work for you.
And if you're not sure what they mean by that, there are two ways to edit a website. One is to look at it from the front end, sort of like you would with anything else, like making a flyer, plop things in where you expect them to go. The other way would be through the back end and you're coding and whatever words like that. So
It's really dragging and dropping a picture into place,
Yeah.
making it bigger with using the little corner things. No, that's the front end versus adding a picture in the back and then putting in, okay, what pixel, what size do I want it to be, and so on. That's a lot harder and just not as friendly.
right. So if you do not have web design experience, you're going to be looking for something where you're doing it from the front.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads me a little bit to, do you guys have any experience with customer service for the different platforms? So do you know what has good customer service, what might not have good customer service?
That's a great question. So WordPress, there's no like centralized WordPress person that you can call. WordPress is open source, so that means that there's a community of people that are supporting it. So there is a community that you can go to. But generally, if you have an issue with WordPress, you're going to have to call a professional locally to have them come help you, or you can find somebody remotely. It's, you know, it's a technology thing. When it comes to Squarespace, they have great chat support. I found they get back to you instantaneously. The only issue with Squarespace is that if you have any like third-party, it's not like a plugin, but like third-party code that's causing an issue, they are pretty strict about not helping you with that. And you need to find somebody who knows what they're doing with Squarespace to kind of help you with that. But yeah, that's been my experience when it comes to support.
There's a community in Squarespace. Like
Yeah.
Chat, there's a
Yeah.
community in Squarespace. I love it.
Yeah, and going back to your comment about the video, Squarespace also has an extensive video library that shows you how to do everything step by step. So generally when we're done with a website, we do a lot of hours of training, and if people forget what we did during those hours, they can go to the library and just watch somebody else do the activity, which I'm a visual person, and that's really helpful for me, and I find it's helpful for the clients that we work with.
I believe Wix had a good library too,
Yeah.
a lot of videos to
Yeah.
watch.
We had, in Tenafly, we had a weird thing happen to our website. And we didn't start designing our website thinking we were going to design it. We were just like, what do we want it to look like? And we were going to hire somebody. We had some budget problems. And then we had an emergency where the person who designed our website added some of their own individual coding, we believe, because they knew how to do it. None of us knew how to do it. And lo and behold, that person left buckles. And their email address went away. We think this is part of it. And our website disappeared. It reverted to our original, like when it was original design. So you open it up. Do you guys remember when superheroes were the summer reading thing? So you open it up, and it was like, where are we? And that's not good. And I know everybody likes Squarespace. They were not very helpful with us. They didn't know. They're like, well, you just have to fix it.
They don't back up the site?
I don't know what happened. Apparently nobody knows what happened, and maybe it got hacked. I don't really know. But they couldn't seem to figure it out. We couldn't get it back without moving things around, adding new photos. We don't know what happened. So during that time, we were working on some designing of our website, and we said, well, oh gosh, we have to get it up there. And so that's kind of, how we kind of, through the back door, decided to design our own. We weren't planning that. But yeah, so, and we had a little problem with Wix, and I was able to email them. They got right back to me. So, my personal experience. Maybe they like
I think
you probably know better what to ask.
that's the
too.
thing, is, one comment I want to make about that is that it's like if you're talking to a plumber or a mechanic, if you don't know the language to be able to communicate with them effectively, they're not really going to know how to help you. But if you do, that's just what we try to offer whenever we're maintaining a website for our client, we can speak their language so we can find a solution or resolution to that issue very quickly. If you're saying, hey, our website went away, if I was on their support team, I don't really know what to tell you because I didn't help you build the website. You're just coming to me with a few bits of information, and from what I can see, I can't really do more than that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think part of it was because we had somebody who could do their own coding and put coding in there, and why it went away, nobody really knows for sure. But I think if it were just like the template and we didn't add anything extra, I don't think we would have had a problem.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, so,
I will add too, if you are, a lot of the platforms that you create, like a Squarespace website, they will link your login to a specific email address. Don't make it an individual person's email
Yeah,
address.
no.
Make it like circ at whatever, or reference at whatever, because if that person leaves and everything else leaves, could leave with it.
I did have all my stuff and to go to under director at. That way, if I left, it would still be there for the next director. Like, that's very important.
and I do want to add, when we switched over and we got into director, we thought we changed everything. But we do think there was some third-party vendor or something that we didn't know about or we didn't change. So, yeah.
Safer to not have to make
Don't do
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say that I just used YouTube as my customer service. I look stuff up on YouTube, and that's a good thing. I mean, there really are a lot of videos, a lot of help out there.
That's
And
true.
the more you look at these videos and the more you read the articles, the more you're going to internalize that language, that jargon,
Yeah.
so you understand what you're looking at. You know, you should know what a hero image is, and you'll know that when you look at the videos and see what it is. You should know what a call to action button is. Those are just terms that, as you do the website and as you read about it and watch videos about them, you'll come to understand what they mean. And it helps when you communicate to a health person or whoever about what the problem is that you know what they mean.
When I first started designing websites, I actually used drag and drop systems out of necessity. And so years ago, I just started creating my own websites, and that led me to learn this language and then delve a little bit deeper and go a little bit further into the background, and then it kind of led me into a new career path that I just needed to know all that information as librarians who understand language. Just needed to know. It is really easy. All the information is out there, like everybody said, and if you don't understand something, just Google it. You'll find the words really quickly.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10. Somebody's already got the same issue you have, so just use the community as a resource.
What about use statistics? How do you figure out who's looking at the website, how you need to change things, where people are going?
So Google Analytics is free and pretty much works with everything out there. And that can give you, although I will say it's not easy to learn. There's a curve to it. I mean, if you have to have a class on something to know how it works, then it's not easy to learn. And there are you can long YouTube videos, lynda.com videos on how to use and how to really utilize Google Analytics. But it's not impossible. You just have to learn about it and just do it. I will tell you one way that I used in figuring out what was wrong with my site is if my own staff is having difficulty finding something on the site, that was a hint right there. You know what? Maybe we should change how we word this or how we place this and make it more obvious. Because it should be intuitive for our staff, who are on that site all the time. If it's not, there's a problem.
I just want to touch on Google Analytics for a second. So whenever we launch a website and we're doing training, one of the things that we include is at least 1 hour of training to show people how to use Google Analytics. Because it's a really great free resource that can give you a ton of information that can help you drill down and let you know what towns people are coming from, what pages are most popular, how long did they stay on the page. Those are the metrics you're going to want to be looking at when you're reading your Google Analytics. And if you take a crash course, or if you use Lynda, which some of the libraries have access to now, which is nice, you can learn a lot about how to do that. But sitting down with somebody is probably the best way to do it. And I find those Lynda courses go through every single thing, which I don't feel is necessary. There's a few key points to Google Analytics, which during the training session, if anybody wants to review that, I'm more than happy to just show you kind of like a little mini crash course about that. But Google Analytics is great, and most of like Wix and Weebly come with I believe, just a standard prepackaged analytics tool. It's kind of like a watered down version of
Yeah.
Google Analytics. You're not going to get the same information, and sometimes it's not the same information, and that the numbers are slightly different, but it'll give you most of what you need. So if you're using a drag and drop editor, Wix, Weebly, Squarespace, they're probably going to have something included there.
Yeah, and that return on investment is huge.
Oh, yeah.
Taking a little bit of extra and taking a class on it or meeting with somebody to learn about Google Analytics, you'll get a lot out of it in the end.
Oh,
It
also,
can be overwhelming.
Also, Google Search Console, whenever you do a website, you need to make sure that you're submitting it to Google Search Console. That allows you to submit your sitemaps. That way Google can understand what you built, what words you have associated with images, what the titles are of all those pages. It's really important to do that. Plus, Google will let you know if you're in violation of anything, or let's say your mobile version doesn't work right, which I don't know if any of you guys have been monitoring your Google Search Consoles, but a lot of the mobile-first search results are happening now. They're kind of rolling that out.
They just kind of did that this week.
Yeah, I've been getting a million emails. Like, oh my God, please stop. But what's great about that is it'll also let you know a little bit more information than you'll get from Google Analytics. For instance, they'll give you some search terms that people typed in when they found your website, which is something that they stopped doing for a long time, but now they're giving you some of that information back. So it's worth submitting your website to Google Search Console. It's not hard to do. It takes a few minutes, but if you don't do it, just like if you don't set up Google Analytics, you can't get that information back. So you need to set it up once you have your website in place. And even right now, if you have an old website with no Google Analytics, get that up first, just to kind of get a baseline for what kind of traffic can we expect from the website, because you won't know the difference if you didn't have anything from before.
And I'm just going to say we had Google Analytics on our old website, but we didn't know, nobody knew we had it, or we didn't know how to get to it. So we have no data from our old website, because remember it crashed. We do have it from our new website, and I would like to take a course in it. I'd like to learn more, but I will tell you this, without doing any training, it tells you how many people come to your website. You can easily see what page they land on and where they go from there. So even if you haven't yet learned more, it's very valuable. You can see, well, you could think, well, why aren't they going to our team website? Do teams just not care? I don't know, but it's very helpful, easy information. So I recommend as soon as you get your website to do it, and do it on your unredesigned website. That's really important so you can compare. We don't have that information, so we have no way of knowing, but it's very simple to do. Just Google Analytics and you'll see how to set it up. It's very simple.
And it's useful as well if you're trying to prove to someone else that you need a new website. If you're trying to prove to your director or to your library board, you can get the analytics for what your current website has, and you can say, our website is not mobile responsive, and we have this percentage of people that are coming from their mobile device to look at our website. We need to fix this. So it's a very good tool to help you in advance before you even start your website.
That's a great point about trying to make an argument, for somebody, because that's what we do a lot here. And seeing the value in things like social media content and coming from social media, getting into your website, knowing where your audience is coming from is huge. So you can know where to invest more and maybe where to back off somewhere else and kind of allocate your funds.
And I'd say also it helps with internal conversations with other staff members. If people have different priorities about what they want to see on the homepage or your navigation, that data can help everyone have the same language about, like, all right, this should maybe take priority over this based off of these links are not getting the hits that we were expecting.
Yeah, the Livingston website, when it first launched, I remember they changed things immediately based on the Google Analytics saying, hey, the events pages are really popular, maybe we should focus on that a little bit more. Or some of the Evo things are kind of picking up steam, maybe we should have buttons on the homepage for that. And it really helps inform marketing, advertising, and also changes to your site. So definitely invest the time in Google Analytics for sure.
I just want to point something out. If you have not yet claimed your library as your business on Google, make sure you do that.
Oh yeah.
Because then, do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so when you Google your library, there's a result that comes on the side usually. It says your library hours, phone number, and so on. Well, you can claim that as your business. And then you can actually go in yourself and update those hours. So like for holidays or something happening, there's a renovation and you close down for a week, you can put that in right there so it's clear right on the main search result that comes up. You can control what pictures show up on your listing. Pagoda, for some reason, was listed as Pagoda second public library on Google. And I'm like, why is it saying that? So I had to actually go, like, I claimed it, I went in, I fixed it, and then after, like, within a week, it was fixed there and on Google Maps and everywhere else, because it was saying Pagoda second public library. So make sure you do that, and that gives you more control too. And also, when you do that, I highly recommend that you put in, like, if you're the director or if you're someone who's always on there and you're in charge of the library's message, put in your cell phone number as, it won't be public, but if someone puts in a review or if someone asks a question, which you can do now on Google, ask the business a question, you'll get it immediately on your phone. And you can respond immediately right there on your phone. It's really great. People are so happy when you respond quickly and they're so impressed. But you can't do that unless you claim it as a business, and claim it for yourself. And to do that, you basically you have to have a Gmail account and you claim the business. And it'll verify by calling the business phone number, you pick up, you put in a code, blah, 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 and then it'll link that business, the library, to that account. So make sure you do that, like, today.
We do have, I think we did a tech talk on that last year. So in your follow-up email, we'll put a link, and it'll be super easy for you to get to.
Just double check, because we ran into I never go through that, nobody ever, because we go to our website, right? But we close on Sundays in the summer. And Google said we were open.
Yup.
And so we never even thought to look there until we had a patron complaint. We're like, we don't have it on our website that we're open, and then we realized where they were looking.
That's always nice, because you know, eventually a patron will probably complain.
Yeah, so you know what to do.
And more people will search the library, find that result, and that's all they're going to do. They're not going to go to your site. They're
Right.
finding it for the address, they're finding it for the phone number, are they open or not? That's it. So that right there is that first impression. And you don't want to have a crappy old picture or none at all. You want to have something good and look good to the public. And don't use a personal email account or your name. Like use it, again, director at or technology at.
I'm
That's why
very
we have
certain that Google Business has to be an @Gmail account though.
No, because I linked it to my library, the director email account at my library. So no, I mean, well, it's a G Suite account.
Are those?
It's a G Suite account.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if it's a G Suite, then that counts as a Gmail. So
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is.
So you're all
actually
fine
correct.
because you're all in G Suite.
Yeah.
And even to just build on what Ben was saying about the Google Search Console, to get a better search result so people don't strictly go to the right side and do where those little hours and stuff, and they go to your actual website. If you submit to Google Search Console, your listing will look much nicer. It will show your top pages, it'll have a little description. I'm sure you've seen it where you'll just see like one line, or you'll get a much more dynamic looking, something more pleasing to click on, which will lead people to more pages on your site. So definitely do the Search Console. And watch how patrons use the website in your library. Because Google Analytics will tell you what pages they're going to, but it won't necessarily always tell you, well, people are scrolling past this really quick. Why is that? So set it up on every computer, have somebody just, not obviously, staring, but take a peek at what people are doing, because those are your users. They're going to use it at home if they're using it in a library. And that's a really good way to know if the library's working, if the website is working efficiently.
But you can also, and we did this quite extensively before we launched our website, is because you have a version that you can reach, but it's not your live site yet. So you can take it to your patrons and say, gee, could you tell us, can you use this website to find out when our next baby time session is? Like if that's something you're trying to do. And you watch how they search. And first of all, it's eye-opening, like how people do it. They really don't know what we think they know.
Yeah, so I actually got my start in user testing. So what they're saying is very accurate. If you ask people to do common activities and you see them actually do it, you'll know whether or not it's easy for them. Also, you can ask friends or family if you don't have the budget to do user testing. It's very important. You have to make sure that the library website is going to do what people think it should be doing for them. If they have an expectation and your website does not meet that expectation, they are going to be frustrated. They're not going to want to use it. So keep that in mind.
Okay, quick example of doing the usability studies, observing people use your website, see how frustrating it can be. The town of Princeton did like a redesign recently, did very little usability studies, and they did a trick where, you know, on a mobile website, you'll see those 3 lines they call the hamburger menu. They utilize that to be their main navigation, as opposed to your typical, like, showing everything on top, like these are the sections. And so many people complained that they had no idea where to go because they didn't realize the 3 little lines in the top right was their link to go anywhere in the
They
website.
did that for the desktop version or something?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
Too modern.
Way too long.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is I guess they had some web designer do it, going for too modern and not really understanding the community who will be actually using the website. And that's where the usability studies are really beneficial.
That works for a startup, not for a library or for a town. That's for
And
sure.
that's a way Google Analytics can help you too, because they'll
Sure.
tell you the age of the people that are
That's a good
logging
point.
onto your website.
Yeah, Google Analytics, I don't know if you guys know this, will actually tell you the average age and the gender of the people that are coming to the website. Now, it's not always accurate, and it's not based on 100% of the people coming to the website. They'll tell you at the top, like, this is based on 30% of your traffic. But it still gives you an insight as to who's using it. And if you have an average user that's 65 plus, probably don't want to have a hamburger because they're going to be looking for a normal layout for a website. They may not be used to that little hamburger icon. So I love that term. I don't know if you guys knew about that beforehand, hamburgers. But yeah, it's something that you should be mindful of. Make the website for every user that's coming there, not just one particular demographic or age group. Do you want to go on to the next question? We talked about this one a lot.
So, what do you guys think a modern website includes? How do people figure out what needs to be the focus of their library website, and what's sign happening?
Ease up on the text.
desktop.
Ease up on the
You know
text.
nothing with that.
Do not cover the front page with text.
Oh my God, yeah. Less is more.
Yeah.
Stop writing so much content on the homepage. Nobody's reading it.
People scan websites. That's
Yes.
what, they just scan through to see what they need, and they're going to click on something. That's
Stop
what you want them
using
to do.
reference.
Click.
Don't say the word reference. Don't like, say research.
Yeah.
Look up something. Do something like that. Like that's what you want to do. You don't want to stay away from that library jargon. It's just not. No one understands what that means.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And that's actually something that we talked about a lot when we were building websites for the libraries and Buckles, is that the terms you guys used is very different than the terms that an average user will have when they're typing something to Google or onto your website. So remember what I said before about thinking about the demographics? You guys aren't the demographic. You already know where everything is. You know how to do the research. It's the average user that you need to be thinking of. So reference and research, it's a great example. So be mindful of how people talk to you when they're coming in and they're asking for something. And make sure you're using those terms on the site.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. I like to think of it as, think of it when you're on the desk and you're having a conversation with a customer, use those words, not the type of words you use when you're talking to a coworker.
I'd also like just to point out that you have users that are coming to a digital platform, so you should be offering your digital material to them clearly and quickly. Because most of the people who are coming to search your site they're just digital people. That's what they do. So they probably want their research and their references in digital form. So ebooks and all of your ebookable content, like have that available to them.
Don't make them search for
Yeah.
it. Don't make them have to dig and find it.
That
It should
is
be
your
very
audience.
clear. Also the calendar. I feel
Right.
people that come to your website, like the
Events.
calendar, the events,
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing, I think. So
Absolutely.
make that, and that's actually one of my gripes about even Wix and Squarespace and like a lot of other sites that even my own current site, which I can't stand and I'm changing. The calendar seems to be an afterthought, and it's awful. I mean, go to my site, upperlibrary.org. It's awful. I hate it,
Yeah,
and the calendar is just terrible. No.
Most of the websites that I built for both the libraries and other libraries, you can find the digital resources, search the catalog, and events within 6 seconds of searching, of looking at the site. It's essential that those 3 things are front and center, because that's that, first of all, those are the things you want to push to show if you have board of directors or whatever, that these services are actually getting used. Don't put visit Hoopla now because nobody knows what Hoopla is, or don't, I think maybe maybe one or two of mine actually say who's providing the service as, their logo as the button to click on to go to the service. Always, icons that represent ebooks or magazines for, RV Digital or anything. You want to use the term of what they're looking for, not the vendor.
The standard
100%.
icon or the standard picture for like Reference USA, Jersey Clicks, like what is
Jersey
that?
Clicks is
No,
definitely
what are those things? I can't, and I hate the Jersey Clicks logo just in general. The old mouse and the little, it's the 90s all over again. Don't use it. Do not use it. Find something else. Research. Research is a word that people understand. Learn something. People understand what that means. Don't use those cookie cutter logos that you get from those vendors because they're just advertising their own business. They're not really, it's not going to help you teach people what it is.
When we use the Buckles catalog site is so much better now because it's responsive and it works so much better. So use those Buckles resources to, to push your books and stuff with the new books, new large print, new video, new audio. It's really nice because you can set this up with a simple button on your site, and then you're going to the Buckles site now, which actually looks good and is usable, where before it wasn't as usable.
Before we get too far,
Catalog site.
I just wanted to mention, because Radwa brought up the calendar, that the Buckles Technology Committee has put forth a recommendation for a new calendar software, because we know that sign-up/events is going away at the end of the year. So if anybody wants a demo or wants to learn more about it, during the workshop process, we can show you what it looks like and give you an example, because right now, if you try to put your sign-up calendar in your library's website, it's going to look awful. If you use a LibCal calendar, they have different ways that you can format the calendar to fix your new website, to fit into your new website, and it looks really pretty, and we really want all of the libraries to be using it. So I'll plug for that later. And yeah, super easy.
So I do want to say, if you're using the Demco sign-up calendar through work on the technology committee, I learned an awful lot about that product, and I can help you customize that for your branding and to put on your website. I did a lot of work. I learned a lot from other tech committees, and so I think I have a decent calendar on our website. The only problem is it's not mobile responsive, so you have to go through some hoops for that, but you can get a calendar that's mobile responsive from sign up. So until we get our new product, I can show you how to make. We will get a new product. I can at least, those that are using Demco, if you need help with that, I'd be happy to show you how you can customize it.
Going back to the original question of what does a modern website include or look like, if you're going to boil it down to just a few key points, I think one, it has to work on a phone and an iPad. It has to be responsive. If it's not responsive, you're wasting your time and your money and your effort. It needs to be mobile responsive. That's number one. Two, I would say probably take use of imagery, beautiful photos. If you guys probably have lots of volunteers, friends of the libraries. See if there's anybody that can take photos of your location or hire somebody to take professional video or professional photos. You'll get that investment back, especially if you're going to start taking donations through your website. If your website looks good, if you guys look like you're healthy and thriving, people are going to want to support you. So keep that in mind. I'm trying to think of anything else. Do you guys have anything else for modern websites?
So one really cool thing that I'm hoping to implement in my future new site is if somebody is going on my site at 10 p.m. after closing hours, I want a pop-up to come up and say, hey, it's late, we're closed, but guess what, we have ebooks, look over here. So it'll actually know what time it is, and they'll be able to click on that. Or if they're, if it's a holiday, and they're on our website, there'll be a holiday-themed thing there, or a badge, or something that I'll be able to program in there, so that based on that person and the cookies in their browser, and when they're coming in, and where they're coming from, or if they click on our site from Facebook, it'll have some Facebook-specific things that we can sort of market to them. That's something that I'm seeing more and more in modern websites. It's more personalized that way, and they kind of know who you little bit and cater more to you, what you might want, versus just a generic kind of thing. And it is possible. I know, I think Wix does have a mechanism for that now, and Drupal, is that what it's called? Drupal or Drupal? No, not Drupal, I hate Drupal.
Oh yeah, I hate your book.
On the record, I hate Drupal. There's like, it's becoming more common, and they refer to it as personalization triggers, personalization triggers. So based on those triggers, it'll do something specific to that user based on where they're coming from or what time it is or other triggers. So that's something.
I just want to add one thing that we found with our user testing, and I know a lot of library websites are going away from this, but we found that people who have kids want kids, I want to see the children's part of the website.
Yeah.
So I would keep children's as a main thing separate so people can always go to it. I know there's some that are like services or in person, and we actually tested out some other terminology. People don't like it. They want to go to children. So I would say keep children
I think
on
that's the
there.
natural association for libraries. Is
Yeah.
it's families with kids that need something to do and a safe place where they can bring their their children. I'm about to have a kid, and I know that we're definitely going to be making use of the. Thank you. I got a small clap over there. I know we're definitely going to be making use of the library for sure, and I think that's what a lot of people in my age group are doing now, where they're kind of awakening to the resource of the library, and that's why it's so important. So that's just my little comment about that.
And service is another one of those jargon things that you really shouldn't be using because it's just so vague. What does it mean, services?
Yeah.
To the average person, like they wouldn't think to go there to find certain things.
What things do you think should be on the menu bar? What words should people be using?
Well, events is still good, I think.
Yeah.
Events.
Or calendar.
Yeah. I've seen, I don't know, maybe it's Twitter, or maybe other sites, I've looked at a lot of sites, and I know, like, some sites will do things like, I want to learn something, or I want to do something, or I want to find something. And so they group, so find something is obviously the catalog, or like book lists, things of that nature. Do something is going to be all the event stuff. And then learn something is going to be all your digital resources, your databases and so forth. So that grouping makes more sense to a normal person. But things like that, I feel, are really good.
Yeah, we found we had some issues, I think, we never did like full sentences, but we
Okay.
did do like find it.
Okay, yeah,
and
that was
things
you.
of that
Okay.
nature, but
Didn't work.
find it was fine.
Okay.
But we had other very general words. We were like the past specific it was like I think a phase or something. It was like an action-oriented type of navigation, but we had like explore and things like this. And that customers found very frustrating because they were like, what am I exploring? Like,
I'm not so much against using the word like library services. I'm not so much. I don't think
we
that's
have
a
to
terrible
use
term. I think
services.
that's okay.
We have events and we have kids and we have our
I think
readers
services
advisory.
is okay.
But we needed services to put like study rooms and a lot of things that could not fit nicely. It's not a great word.
Yeah,
not.
but I think
It's hard to
I
find.
think it's okay.
Yeah.
I would be okay. I'm okay with services.
It's also a good idea while you're determining what to put on your website to look at other library websites.
Oh yeah.
And then if you choose to build on your own or hire a designer, you can show whoever you're working with, I like this about this website, or I like that about that website. And that will help you determine a little bit more about what you want to do with your own website too.
And I want to say, Morgan gave me a good tip, because before we started working, we asked a lot of people, how did you redesign it, what did you do? But she gave me a great tip. She planned her website by using Google Drawings. Like, okay, I want this to be here, and how does this color look, and how will it fit on the page? And that was really helpful, because we could show it to all of our staff, we could tweak it, we could change the colors, we could ask patrons, what do you think, without having done any web design at all. But it gives you an idea of how people are thinking about websites. And one other thing I want to mention, use conventions where they're useful. Like, I know about is probably well, people know what about is.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
know
it's
they
very
can go there to find your staff, your policy, whatever. So that is, okay, it's a miscellaneous term, but people know how to
Every
use
site has
that.
that.
Yeah. We saw one site that used essentials as their term. We thought, oh, what a great word. and the,
No one knows what it means.
no, they're like, what is that? Where's your about choice? So use conventions when it makes sense for you.
Yeah, I would say probably you definitely want to have a home or make sure that your logo brings you back. But most people, especially anyone skewing a little bit higher in the age group, they're going to want to see the home button because that's what they're familiar with. I would definitely say when you're talking about age groups, you can kind of make sure that they're split up so people know which age group you're talking about, going for children or teens or adult. You want to make sure that that's definitely up there. I think about or history is also good. Just think about the things you see when you generally go to a website, because I know I was saying before that you're not the average user, but in some instances you are, because you've been to websites before. You kind of know instinctively what's a normal thing to expect when you go to a website. So trust yourself when you're redesigning your site.
A large search bar.
Oh,
People
yeah.
are used to Google. They're
Yeah.
not going to find it, this tiny little thing in the corner. It's got to be large, big search bar. And it should be able to search the catalog from there and also the website itself too. You can do it either like we have a little arrow next to it and you can click on it and then choose the catalog or the website and then do what you want, or I think there's a way to do, well, not really, some products will let you do both of them. But generally, it's much easier just to have that little menu next to it, search the website or search the catalog.
Yeah. Buckles gives a lot of instruction on how to be able to integrate that into your website, which if you guys go to the coding area of the Buckles site, you should be able to
But you
find
do
that.
have to modify that code to make it bigger. Because I
Oh, yeah.
think by default it's very, very small.
So tiny.
You gotta make it bigger. And it's actually very, very easy. I mean, I'm sure the Buckles people can show you how to do it. Sorry guys, I didn't hear you.
CSS includes search with the search script.
But you can include,
Yeah, you
you
have to
can add
modify
it.
that.
You have to
You
Yeah.
make it more you want.
They have a default that comes with it,
Yeah.
but you have to modify
And
it.
you can
for
change it. I
which-
remember doing that.
Does everybody here know what CSS is? Okay, so I'm getting a few
Fancy
minutes
stuff.
here. It's basically how you style how something looks on the page, how it responds to mobile and things like that. So
Big versus small,
yeah, so if,
tall versus short.
exactly. So you're going to have to customize it to a point, but I think there's kind of an out-of-the-box default that comes from Buckles.
And also, newer websites use bigger fonts, just saying, like, I don't know, you want to go bigger in your text. Some of us are getting older,
Big and
we
bold.
can't see it.
Yeah.
Big and bold, yeah.
Yeah, it's easier for people to be able to read things. We just did a website and the client was like, is this for somebody who's blind? I'm like, this is the style now. You need things to be bigger because you're doing less is more, so you need less words to take up more space.
And that's key. Remember, less words.
Yeah.
People are scanning, they don't want to read for days.
If you have a white background, don't use like light gray text.
Oh,
Small
yeah.
light gray, you can't see it.
That's another thing I want to bring up, colors. Especially on library websites, I've seen some god-awful colors. And I think you all know who is in violation of this rule right now in the crowd. When you're doing colors, think of it kind of like if you're trying to sell a house. Make sure you are using neutral colors that aren't going to bother anybody, but also make sure that you're trying to integrate the colors that you're choosing with the logo colors as well. That's kind of best practices for designing a site. So if you have blue and gray in your logo, try to integrate that onto the website and find corresponding colors that work with it. When we do the training session, I'm going to give you guys a link to a website that allows you, if you have the hex code for your color, it'll tell you what's a good color that will go and match with this. So we can talk about that afterwards if you guys want to learn more about
A
that.
hex code is a 6 numbers and letters code for every color there is on the web.
Yeah.
So if you have that hex code, you put it in and you have the color. That's how you speak color language on the
Yeah, it's
web.
like a universal UPC scanning barcode or something like that.
I'd add to be mindful of when you're using a color on top of a color.
Oh yeah.
We use red and gray, and for a while, we had dark gray and this medium red, and it blinded you almost. It was extremely hard to read, and we really had to darken the gray, the background, to make it readable. So be mindful of that too.
Yeah, red is actually a very hard color for people to be able to see. If you're going to be doing things like blues, yellows, grays, whites, blacks, things that contrast well is probably a good idea. Red's probably better for an announcement bar, or warning, we're closed, there's snow. But other than that, use that as little as possible.
Yeah, when you're looking at colors and things, do a search on the psychology behind colors.
Yeah.
And you'll see blues are very appealing to the masses, and reds mean danger.
Yeah.
So beware of how you use them.
Yeah.
There's also two things that we learned about that we use. There's an accessibility website, which will help you test the colors of your text versus the color of your background to make sure it's visible to people who have color blindness, or even as they get older and they can't see contrast as much, it helps you with the contrast. So that's number one. And there are color palette pickers out there. So like if you have a great color that's in your, like it's in your logo and you want to use it but you don't know what goes with it, you can go to these websites and they, from an artistic point of view, help you pick complementary colors that might look good with it. And then you can test it out to see, well, does it look good or do I not like it? Or do our patrons like it or not?
There are actually a lot of apps now where you can take a picture or something and it'll tell you the hex code for all the different colors that are appearing in that. So you can take a picture of your logo if you don't have the hex code.
Yeah. Just want to touch on that for a second. Does everybody here know what ADA compliance is?
Yeah.
Okay, so websites, it's not happening just yet, but it's probably going to happen in the future where most websites are going to have to be ADA compliant. So getting a jump on that is a good idea. Making sure the contrast is there, making sure it's mobile responsive, you can increase font sizes. Those are important things. Also making sure there's good descriptions for images, because if you have somebody who is visually impaired and they're going to the website, they're probably going to be using a reader and they're going to read what the image is. And what's cool about this is that that's actually the same way that Google works, because Google does not have eyes yet. They scan the website, and if you have an image that's just JPEG 257, that's all that image means to Google, and that's all that image means to somebody with a visual impairment reader. So if you want to make sure that that image is something that somebody who's blind can see, you have to describe what that image is and what the intent of that image is. And you can put that in the alt text or the alternative text for the image.
And consider language translation too, if there's
Yes.
a high population of a specific culture that speaks a different language. Make sure that your website can translate properly so that they can still read it in another language.
Sorry, I'm talking again. There's two schools of thoughts on that. There's one where you can have a translator on the website where it kind of just translates it using Google Translator, which I don't generally recommend because have you ever tried using Google Translator?
Yes.
You can potentially offend somebody. So
It works if you're not using different terms. It has to be
Yeah.
very plain
yes,
language.
yeah, which is fine. And if you have nothing, use that because you have nothing else. That's the only alternative, and it's free. So why not? But the best thing to do is if you can find a volunteer who speaks the language natively, that they can translate it for you. You can clone pages over and then just modify them and have that person just duplicate it. There's also other ways for you to insert the information in that probably has.
What would you do about like dynamic content that's not always appeared? If you have somebody doing that, and that's where the Google language translator comes in.
Exactly.
And you can do manual translations with the Google language translator as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's tricky.
Yeah, translating websites is always the hardest thing, and I know a lot of you guys out there have Russian, Spanish, Japanese, Korean populations that you really want to start marketing to, because I have found that the immigrant population uses the library as a resource a lot more, I think, than people that are living in the actual area. So I'm seeing a lot of nodding heads here. So translating it with a native speaker, probably your best bet, but Google Translate is also, it can be effective. It's definitely not something that you should speaker knows about.
All right, let's talk about money. How much is it going to cost if someone wants to redesign their website? What can they plan to budget in? If they're going to build it on their own, if they're going to hire a web designer, what's it going to look like?
I saw a great website the other day. It's not a person that's in New Jersey, but it's another web designer, and their pricing page had, if you want to spend $500, what you can expect. If you want to spend $1,000, what you can expect. And basically, his point was that garbage, 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 until you get around the $2,000 to $3,000 range, because that's when you can actually pay for somebody's opinion and their time to help you design a good website. I think that's kind of the average. You can pay more and you can pay less, but usually you're going to be getting more or you're going to be getting less for that.
So I would say 3,000 is probably the bottom.
Yeah. So
Anything less than that,
you're probably not going to get what you're paying for. Yeah. It's if you're already spending X amount, you might as well spend a little bit more to really get what you want and to get that additional attention for your project. Do you guys have? You all developed websites before, average pricing, what do you think about that?
With Wix, Squarespace, WordPress with page line, I think was about like $500 to $600 to get started. And then there is going to be an annual subscription cost to those services. So some of the plugins that I got for Wix, the more advanced functionalities, would cost like maybe $15 a year. So you have to add that.
What do they do for hosting monthly?
So I'm trying to remember, I think Wix, I don't remember. But there's some
Well,
platforms
usually
that they
Yeah,
they
what do
host
you-
it for
In the
you.
$30 range, right?
Oh, well, I think we're paying something like $200 for the
Yeah,
year.
it's not much.
It's not much, no.
Most of those drag and drop, like Wix Weebly, Squarespace, you're gonna average around $200 for the year for the
Yeah.
right to use their service. Generally, that includes hosting. They usually include an SSL certificate with that as well, which is important for all you librarians out there. You have a government-style website, you wanna make sure it's secure. You're generally gonna average around $200. You saying 5 or 6, I don't mean
With
to.
all the advanced stuff that I got.
I was gonna say, that's a little misleading because that's from the perspective of if you're doing it.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
So,
I was wondering.
not from having somebody
Yes.
build it for you. That is probably accurate for if you're doing it on your
But
own.
generally, if you're using Wix, you're not going to pay somebody to build you a Wix site.
I mean,
You could.
you can. There are Wix builders out there. I think they have them
You
on this
could, but
site.
you-
Yeah,
I mean, you
don't
can have them look at your website if you want, but it's.
Yeah, I talk about these things like they're IKEA furniture. You can put IKEA furniture together, but sometimes people pay someone to do that for them. So,
You
yeah.
can also build
Actual
in
furniture.
Wix or Squarespace on your own, and then if you had some additional piece of functionality or some big idea you just want to create, then just pull in somebody
Yeah.
to pay for just that.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
And if you're wondering who on your staff should do this, don't necessarily pick the most tech-savvy person, pick the most artistic person. Because Wix and Squarespace are really, like, if someone from my generation will get it. We'll pick it up, we'll try it out, we'll go to some YouTube videos and figure out how to use it. It's not difficult. What is difficult, and even if you're tech-savvy, you could get this wrong, is if you have no sense of style and just cannot understand color and spacing and font, that's harder, honestly. That's something that's more intuitive, and if you don't have it, it's kind of hard to learn it. So I would pick the more artistic person on your staff who has the mental capacity to learn Wix and Squarespace, get it, because there's not much coding involved. It's drag and drop. You learn how to use this thing like you learn how to use Polaris. You figure it out, you go through the steps, you learn each function, you do it, and then the hard part is making it all look good and making the style decisions, where to put the button, how big to make it, what font to use. Those decisions, if you get them wrong, it'll look terrible no matter how tech savvy you are.
It's a good idea to remember that we have a lot of colleges around too, so maybe there's an intern that, or a student that needs something for their portfolio and will be happy to work with you to help you get this underway and maybe do that little extra time and effort for your site for you.
I think the problem with hiring somebody like that is they disappear.
Yeah.
I've had
I was gonna say
clients who
that.
come to me and they're like, well, this college kid built me the site and I can't find them and I need to say, I don't know what to do. I think
I'm
I
not
said,
saying like keep
Todd isn't
them,
responding to emails.
I'm not saying hold them fully responsible
oh,
for
okay,
your
you're saying
site.
just the.
But if you need a little bit of extra, like you need another eye on somebody who's studying color, or if you want a little extra help, and then make it a finite amount of time. Say we're gonna do it for this amount of time. You usually this amount of hours. You know how that is.
Just as, I think as a developer, I just have a different perspective.
Oh,
Yeah,
I understand.
when it comes to development, I think let's speak to this, is that there's a project, there's an amount of time you want to spend on this, and if you are relying on volunteers or helpers, that amount of time can go from 3 months to 3 years.
And then it becomes a more stressful process.
Yeah.
You know, when you hire a developer, they're taking the stress away from the project.
Yeah.
They have the experience to, and I don't want to make this like a sales pitch. They have the experience to put the project together. You know, if your lights don't work, you don't say, well, let me look on YouTube and see if I can figure this light out.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
know.
it's-
We don't have the money.
If you don't have the money, yes, there are ways to build a perfectly working site in Wix or Squarespace as somebody who has
Yeah.
knowledge of the product. But a developer does offer you expertise in different areas.
I think with anything, you always remember that you get what you pay for.
For sure.
Always.
And you do have to keep in mind that if you choose to build a website on your own, you have to pay your staff member to do that. And you have to have your staff member balance their time as building the website with their regular
It
duties.
takes quite a bit.
So you might,
It's a lot of time.
if you have a person in your library building it, it might take them 6 months to a year, versus you could pay a designer and they could get it finished in 3 months or less.
There's a question in the back.
Yeah, actually, I have a question related to that. If you were budgeting time, how much time would you budget for everything? This might be a question more for some of the librarians who have built the sites themselves.
Okay.
'Cause
I believe with Pagoda, when I really like actually sat
Can I
down
guess before you say something?
sorry?
Can I guess before you say it?
Sure.
6 months.
Oh God, no.
I mean, even more specific than that, if you can estimate it.
Well, I
Like,
don't
you're gonna say that.
think, I don't think you can be, I don't think you're a prime example because you have, it seems like you have a lot more experience.
Right.
than-
Okay.
I think
So
the
I'm
average
gonna say
person-
probably the average person, even though I'm not a librarian,
right,
I would say it's gonna take you 6 to 8 months at a minimum.
gotcha.
It took us about 6 months,
Yeah.
but most of that was our prep work, not work on the
But
website
that's
Right.
itself.
But that's all related.
That's a part of it.
Right,
Whereas-
right, that's what I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
the majority of the time was before we ever got our Wix.
Right.
It was
I know
really,
Livingston took 6 months.
you know, user testing, what do our users want, what does the staff want? So you're gonna have to do that part anyway. So keep that in mind, and I just wanna say, shout out to all those baby boomers out there. You can do it. It's not just a millennial thing, it's not that hard. I'm not saying you should just definitely DIY, do it yourself. Certainly a web designer can bring a lot of things that we don't have on our website and expertise we don't have, but we were stuck. So if you have an emergency or something, you can do it.
Anybody can do this. Anybody can build a website. It's just that the website that anybody can build isn't going to be the same as the website that a designer is going to build. So that's, you know, these builders have made it easier for people to just pick these things up and run with them. And, you know, talking about the baby boomers out there, you can do this. You know, we've built websites for people, especially in Squarespace. I like doing that for people who don't have as much technology background, that probably won't be able to maintain or keep a WordPress website secure. If you're using a builder, you can do this, but remember, you may need help with this because it's not your job, it's not your background generally, and you don't have the experience that somebody who's been doing this for 5 or 10 years has been doing. So before you were saying,
You can do it in 3 months. That's what
She can do it in 3 months.
You can do it in 3 months. When I was doing the website, there were weeks where I was like working hardcore for 20 hours a week on it, like just at home or whatever, and others where I would out in 2 or 3 hours a week on it. But you can definitely do it in 2 to 3 months.
I mean,
It's doable. It's not impossible. It's
but,
not
but
impossible.
just from what you said, 20 hours a week, Robert. Now you're talking about your hourly rate versus just paying somebody. And then if it took you, yeah, it is.
Come on,
It depends on
It's something a lot of money.
And I'm talking 20 hours, including all the Googling and the YouTubing and
guys,
just
do it yourself,
learning
I'll
about
give you
stuff.
my card, and you know, just...
It's so much fun.
Okay, I'm gonna interject real quick that being a part of, if you're a member of a Buckles library, we have the Buckles Tech at buckles.org listserv. Use it and you can ask other people technology questions. We're a great resource for each other. And make sure you fill out your evaluation before we end today. Throwing that in there now. And I will open now to questions from the audience since we are moving that way anyway. Yes?
A person who's done coding all the time, what is the best software to go into from coding? I'm hearing WordPress, Wix, etc. What would be the best way to go?
If you're an experienced coder or WordPress,
WordPress.
if WordPress is definitely scarier if you're not a coder.
It's code heavy, for sure.
It's code heavy, there's a much higher learning curve. So if you already have that under your belt, you can go to WordPress, it'll give you the most functionality. You'll be able to do a lot more.
So you can go behind the scenes with WordPress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Text
Okay.
editor.
The only thing I would caution you
You can break things.
on, well, no, not even that. If you're the person who knows how to do it and you leave,
Oh, yeah.
do you have the staff who can maintain it? Right? Like, you have to think future. It's not you one person,
That
right?
is true, yeah.
I'm speaking from experience. We had a terrible issue with that. So I'm just saying, it's great if you can code it yourself, but who's coming after you to
I want to just
update it?
say earlier on top of that, because whether you're having volunteers or you're hiring a developer who does a long project for you, whatever happens afterward, have that, if some catastrophe happens, we have a backup plan, or you just know what's going to happen once it's perfect. Because we even had a professional developer a long time ago do a big part of our site. They got merged into another web development company, and they ceased to exist anymore. And we couldn't contact them or do anything. And they had a lot of custom code and stuff, so we had a similar issue. And demand as much documentation as you can when they're doing the project. Don't let them just sort of insert a bunch of code and then leave. Just have as much documentation that if you had to have somebody else who understands the code, they could at least read it and understand what was done to your site before.
It's like working with a mechanic where you go to one mechanic and they fix it, and then you go to another mechanic and they're like, what did that mechanic do? They were an
Yeah.
idiot. So you have to make sure that you're following up with those individuals.
Unless you're a big library that has the budget for a full-time technology librarian or, full-time web developer, today and tomorrow and 10 years from now, be careful. Be careful with, you may have the skill today, but you do want to future-proof it for what's going to be there after you.
That's a great point. You really need to focus on what's the next step of this library? What happens if I'm not here? What if the person who built it gets hit by a bus? You have to really think about those things because it's a real eventuality. I mean, especially in Buckles, you guys move around all the time from library to library. So yeah, I know. If you're the person who knows the library website and then you're gone, what's happening with them? What are they going to do? So you want to make sure that the website that you're building is one that's easy for the next person to kind of pick up and run with. And if they can't do that, at least hire somebody to maintain your website for you so that you don't really have to worry about that. A reputable company that can maintain it, modify it, and update it for you on a daily basis.
That said, your website today should not be the same website 10 years from now.
True.
Or even 2 years from now, honestly, like 2 years.
3 years.
Yeah, 3 years is the average for updating and changing of a website because the styles change,
Yeah,
the security changes.
drastically.
There's so many things that are different. Websites that I built when we first started building websites, I would never build a site like that now, just because styles have changed. It's completely different.
I look at Hackathon's site now, and I'm like, oh, and I think they are working on upgrading it, so I'm glad that they're doing that, but it's changed. Things are different.
Tim, what's your question?
Yeah, I have actually two questions. One is a practical question, the other is an ethical question. The first one is, what's your favorite themes? You talked about the platform before, yeah. This one is a question for everybody. Second one is an ethical question about using the Google Analytics on the library website.
Google what? Sorry.
Google
Analytics.
It's a private company, it's a software. I know the analytics tool is good for you and in terms of the developing the better website and also the collecting the usage data. But I don't know whether it's good or we are obligated to let the people know that this website has a Google Analytics on.
So
I don't know that there is an answer, but
I think we're going to GDRP is. GDRP, has anybody heard about that? Where you may have gone on websites now and you see these little pop-ups that say, hey, we're using cookies.
Europe.
Yeah, so a lot of American websites are kind of seeing the writing on the wall here, and also if they have clients in Europe or if they're going to get European traffic, they want to make sure that they're in compliance, err on the side of caution there. So if you're concerned about that, it's really easy to put a pop-up there saying, hey, just want to let you know if you're using our website, we do collect data. That way, they're aware.
Even if you have full privacy policy,
Yeah.
which, like what we were saying
You should
before
have
about that custom
Yeah.
box, that is definitely something you're gonna, you would have to disclose, hey, we're pulling your Facebook data, hey, we're pulling your service,
Yeah.
all of that you have to disclose if you're using it.
Just be honest.
This is a pet peeve of mine. We cannot not collect data.
Yeah.
We live in the 21st century.
Being collected anyways.
We are shooting ourselves in the foot if we decide, no, we're above all that, and we're all high and mighty, and we'll respect your privacy. I'm not saying disrespect privacy. I'm not saying that, camera. I'm not saying
Well, you're not in a position to sell to a third party also. I think that's where the ethics probably comes into
we
play.
have to survive. We have to compete. And To do that today, you compete by collecting information and using it to optimize the user experience. You have to. You can't not do that. If you don't do that, we are all going to be obsolete in 10 years.
Yeah. Every company is collecting data.
That's just, that's all there is to it.
And you're using data that's already there. You're not asking them for new information. You're not asking them to create a profile and all of their information to use the library. You're just using data that exists.
Plus, you're not selling it, which is generally the main concern
Yes.
for data, is that, it's like with Facebook, they were selling our data, and they got really mad about that, even though most of us probably knew, anyone in the technology field knew that that was happening anyways. But if you're really concerned about it, have a pop-up. Otherwise, most people don't, because I think the expectation now is when you're on a website, somebody's watching what you're doing. And even the browsers will track what you're doing. Chrome is tracking what you're doing. So, yeah, there's that. Do you guys want to talk about themes?
I'm a fan of the Genesis framework. That's a Studio Press. Studio Press makes their themes. They're very secure. All of their themes are very, very nice. I use a custom theme that I built, but that's my favorite company that I've found.
Is your theme built on the Genesis framework?
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah, that's a good one. That's one that we definitely work for.
So just to clarify, a framework is a little bit different from just a regular theme.
Sure.
A framework is, I don't know how to describe it. I know I can't explain it. It's multiple themes.
The skeleton.
It's a
Right,
skeleton.
it handles the stuff before, when you get a framework, then you have to add a child theme, but this is all stuff that we will talk about. If we start throwing this out there, then it gets a little.
Yeah, it's going to be a little locked
But
down.
it's a good idea to, if you're going to be doing WordPress,
Stay away
for
from a
sure,
free one.
go for some kind of framework, because they're going to be the most secure, they're going to have the most support, and they're going to have a lot more functionality. And I just want to answer the question real quick. So my favorite themes change every single day. Things change on a daily basis in the web world. So what really matters, because you can change the color and the style really easily, what matters is the functionality. What matters is there an ability in this theme or in this framework or whatever to have, a chat box so that someone could ask a question and I get the question in my face? Is there an ability to create a widget, or put in my own custom HTML or whatever, and have that look good on the website? Is there, do they have the notice bar, or what the actual notification
Yeah.
bar for when you're closing, when something's going on, an emergency? Does it have that ability? So you want to be looking for those functionalities versus just how it looks. Because how it looks you can change pretty easy. What's going to matter in the end is what you can do with the site.
That makes me think it's probably a good idea to sort of maybe inventory the functionalities that you want to see on your website, along with those modern web design principles you're talking. And then don't just go on, like you're using WordPress, you can like look at the WordPress theme store and just keep mindful of those functionalities, those sort of web design principles, and then look at the themes. And you'll be able just to read it like, that's sort of what I want, I'll try that, I'll try that.
If you're a web design version, there's functionalities out there that you haven't even thought of. But if you just go and look at these frameworks and see what they offer, you'll be astounded. There's just so much out there that you can do that you won't even know what you're looking for until you see it. Like, oh, I can use it for that and that and that. Awesome. So that's what's more important. It's what your site can do versus how it looks in the theme world.
Yeah, in terms of other themes that I would recommend just to write down, Divi is a great theme. They've been around for years. They have great support. They have lifetime licenses for security updates and things like that to make sure that everything's compatible with all your plugins and stuff like that. DIVI is how you spell Divi. Another one, the Avada or Avada theme, however you pronounce it. AVADA, I believe. What's another good one? Do you guys think? Anybody else have any other good themes?
I stick with Genesis for now.
Right, so, yeah, stick with what you know is also a good tactic. And if you guys need to look up other themes, one of the resources that I recommend using is Theme Forest. I think it's .net or .com, I forget. Just Google Theme Forest.
Yeah.
It'll be the first thing that shows up. And when you are purchasing themes, the things you need to check is how long has this theme been in existence? When was the last time they updated it? Because if the last update was July of 2015, run the other direction.
This goes with plugins as well.
Plugins.
Yeah,
That's
that's-
the next
That's
step.
even worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the next inevitable
If
question.
if it wasn't updated in the last 4 years.
Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Let's take
No,
some
I-
more
Most of
questions
them
now.
are.
In the back?
In terms of functionality, our functionality, we need a calendar, we need a reservation system, and we need that responsiveness of emails telling you you're registered, you know, here's your reminder, this has been canceled. So Avance is going away at the end of the year. Tell me about what's replacing it and what are my other options besides using the replacement to Avance to get where I want to be. I mean, we're moving over to Wix and we're like excited, but we're not quite sure about our calendar and our reservation system. Because whenever we put out a constant contact saying we've got a children's program, register, our usage goes through. So we need that functionality.
We can talk about that a little bit more after the panel. So we are looking at LibCal.
Could you just spell that?
LIBCAL. And that's something that is going to be mobile responsive. You can adapt it into different ways to look on your website so that it's easy for people to look through. You can get a full calendar, you can get a calendar widget for the side, a smaller version of the calendar. And, but that is,
You change the views on it as well.
You
like
can change
list
the
view.
It's the same company that makes lib guides.
Right.
So they're actually a library, like, you know, focused company, which is good.
and they can handle room reservations and things like that. So we're hoping that that gets voted in during the budget vote. If it does not, the Buckles Tech Committee has created a list of other options, what the individual cost per library is, and what our recommendations are. So if that does not pass, if it doesn't get accepted by everyone, you can still opt into that individually, or you can opt into one of the other options. So,
Thank you.
There's a question in the back.
I was actually going to ask Morgan if she could describe exactly what she just described.
Okay.
So.
For the website designers, do you generally include maintenance in your contracts, or is it a separate?
That's a good question. Most of the time, when I'm doing a WordPress website, at least for the first year, I require it because I don't want to get an angry email 3 months afterwards when somebody broke something and then they blame us. So we like to include that for the first year, bless you, because generally within the first year, people are going to be learning how everything works, maybe mess something up. You're going to want to have a nice little safety net to be able to catch you. When it comes to Squarespace websites, we do not require ongoing support because you don't really need it. We include it just in case you need edits, adding new pages, you need a little bit extra training, things like that. So usually, I think with most web designers, it's you pay one price for the design, and then there's usually a conversation afterwards about whether or not you want ongoing maintenance because it's a completely separate service.
The way I handle the maintenance is after the site is built for 3 months, I do free maintenance and show you so you can get comfortable whether or not you want to continue with the maintenance package or handle it yourself. That's the way I do it. I don't require it. It is, if you just strictly want a plugin, hey, update my plugins, not make any kind of mass changes, it's generally pretty affordable.
I know we had some questions on this side. Mary?
Mine is kind of more of a philosophical question
Love
about the
it.
design of websites. We all know that our websites need to be mobile responsive, less text, bigger photos, bigger search window. Now, having said that, there are lots of good-looking sites in Buckles that are still in a 2 or 3 column grid format, and they work because they're not overly texty and they're neat, and they're what we're used to seeing. What I have been seeing a lot of, though, this is the cutting edge, is you open the site, you go to the home page, and there's an enormous photo that takes up the entire screen, and then you look at it, and then it starts moving. And then you scroll down a little farther, and then you get to the library value calculator, and then that starts to scroll up numbers too. And basically, I feel like I'm on the home page of a restaurant, actually, and it's beautiful. But as a librarian, or even just a searcher, I sometimes find myself a little lost, and I'm struggling to remember, to orient myself in this brave new world. And it is beautiful. But I'm just wondering because this is obviously the cutting edge. So I wanted to know philosophically if you have any thoughts about, because obviously it's a pendulum. It went from where we were, and now we're going all the way over here? And is there a happy medium? Do you think there are thoughts about, if you're gonna design your site that way, should you have some ideas about how big should your photos be? Where should your menus go? Should they be at the bottom of the page? Should they be running up the side? Where are your Google and social media buttons going? So I'm finding that to be a little bit off-putting.
I stay away from my library websites. I stay away from unless it's requested by the client. I stay away from the full page slider. I stay away from the big hero image on library websites. I have plenty of websites that do that, where it's like, the whole page. For a library website, I think the slider, if you are going to have one, should be small, and it should be accompanied by something else that people are going to look at and want to look at, like your events or your hours. That way they will actually pay attention to the slider. When you have that full slider at the top, yeah, it looks great.
But what does it
But
teach
what-
you? What does it tell you?
And also, you have to have somebody on staff that's going to make a really nice slide. A good example is I developed a site for Paramus. It's my only library site that has that full slide, but they have somebody in-house that makes beautiful images that are actually compelling and you're going to want to look at. Otherwise, you'll find a lot of the times the slides either don't change because they don't have somebody to update them, or they start to deteriorate and look worse over time because people get complacent and don't want to. So I'm not a fan of the big slides.
I can actually, we have a big slider, and we can say that after you get to the third or fourth slide, nobody's clicking on it. A lot of the time it's just for there's a lot of different people that want to be in the slider, so we end up putting everybody in the slider, but it's not a very good solution.
That's always my suggestion with libraries. The people may have different perspective on it or a different thought, but I am not a fan of the big slider for a library.
What you described with that background with the video and a humongous picture, and you scroll down and you get the pop, that's a very common thing for sites of companies that want to sell you something, that want to sell you a service, want to sell you a product. It's a very common, and it works. Yeah, and it works really well for them. And I will confess, I actually kind of fell into that trap a little bit at Aloutto. My site there, when I did that, the first thing you saw was the background video, which I changed periodically. I had a little astronaut, but I had on top of it a humongous search bar on top of it. So that was the focus, was that search bar. And below that, I didn't have. I had our blog right below that. But I did I was seduced by that really nice looking big, and it looked beautiful. I do think that the library, so what are we trying to do on this site? Are we trying to seduce people with something? Or are we trying to, I mean, sure, why not? But are we trying to give users what they come to find? And really, what do they come to find on our website? What is the number one thing that people want to go to our website for? Well, sure, hours, but I think it's events. I think events are and what's going on, and digital, and a catalog, and digital service. I think those are the key things.
They can find your hours on Google too. They might not even make it to your website.
So I definitely agree that after the third or fourth, slide, people just won't look anymore. I look because I want to steal good ideas, so I'll keep looking at library slides and see what's going on. But a normal person isn't going to do that. And there's also a good question there too, is should you have your home page be where just the one page without scrolling necessary? Should you have just what you need on that home page, everything right there, and you don't need to scroll at all? But it's possible to have a home page like that though. Montclair's does it pretty well. Montclair's website, if you go on their...
How about on the phone, or what if it's...
No, not on the phone. I'm talking about on
a desktop.
On a desktop. You could have a very small slider, your calendar, a few key things, and not go beyond that. And then you have your menu for other things. That's one way of doing it, which could work. And you could have another way where you have to scroll down for more things. But you have to ask yourself, are people going to scroll down or not?
More people scroll now because they're used to mobile.
That is true.
I
That is
personally
true.
think you can stuff the homepage and let it scroll for an hour.
Yeah.
People will scroll, they're used to it. They're looking at it, 70% of people are looking at it on their phone anyway.
They're scrolling.
They're scrolling.
And many people are not gonna go past your homepage, so there is
I see
the
it's a lot of-
thinking of putting everything on the homepage, because they're not gonna go past the homepage. But it's just, it's a different way,
Can I
it's
just-
different philosophies.
Add to though, I agree about scrolling as well. We have those internal arguments all the time. But be careful about the TMI, too much information, the density of all the information. If you're gonna have it long, make
Lots
sure
of
there's
white space.
lots of white space, space in between areas. Like if you have a blog, make sure there's space in between that and the things around it, so someone clearly, when scanning it, can, all right, I'm passing the blog section or whatever.
In terms of sliders, I like to use sliders, but I think you made a point about after the fourth one, people's eyes glaze over. They're not paying attention to it. It's really all about how you use it and what your intention is. Again, my background is user testing. I've seen people who just don't scroll down and they just stay there because they think that's the entire website. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and I'm sure you can all think of a patron where they would probably do that. Where they're just not going to scroll down, they're not going to know about that. When it comes to images, if you're doing a slider, those images have to pop. They have to look really good, and the service offering that you're providing has to be crystal clear to them, that call to action that we were talking about before. If you have 3 things that people are going to be doing on your website, or 3 activities that you want them to be doing, that should be on the slider. And it's a really easy way to make your site look a little bit more modern. However, you're talking about a pendulum. Things swing back and forth. It was very popular to have sliders for a long time, and now it's kind of less popular, I think. I'm getting less requests for that. Some websites do, and I think John was saying, if the client requests it, that they're going to do it, the client's always right.
Slider's okay, I'm just not a fan for
Accessibility.
the library
Yeah.
of taking up the first third of the page of the slider. I'm not a fan of that personally. But I
Yeah,
have
it's
many
an
websites
opinion.
that are like that. But
I think it comes down to personal opinion in terms of what you guys think.
they both can
You
work.
should definitely have some kind of view of your calendar, upcoming events,
Oh, for
like
sure.
the next 5 or 6 things,
Yes.
right there on the homepage, clear. That's, I think, like, just, you have to have that.
I want to add one thing based on something that Stephen said before as well. There are people who need space on your website, like your friends, and they might have specific opinions about where their stuff should go on your website. And other groups too, and your board might have opinions.
Yeah.
Everybody might be weighing in.
Sponsors.
When you're working on building your website, use a small team, and then once you've built something, then show someone and ask them what they think. Because if you ask for a lot of opinions up front, you're going to get all the opinions, and then they're going to be mad when you don't listen to their opinions. So build first, show
I
later.
want to mention something that's a really big pet peeve of mine. Do not use your flyers on your site. The paper flyers that you make for programs to advertise them on paper, do not take that and put it on your website.
Or
That
on
is
your
for,
social media.
or anywhere.
Don't.
That is for paper. It is not for the screen.
It's not going to look the
Do
same.
not use Windows 95 clip arts on your site.
If they have a flyer that they can't read on their phone, they're just going to get annoyed. So if
I-
you have
I-
the information, make it readable.
I've literally seen sliders with a paper flyer on it, I can't believe, do not do that.
That's not going to seduce anyone.
Do not do that. You have to make things for the screen. You have to make it for that size and make, the picture meant to be different on there versus on Facebook versus on your paper flyer. You have to change it for the medium. Don't do this.
I saw someone raising their hand over there.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, so, it was behind you, sorry.
So basically, speaking about images, what are some sources that
Good
are good
question.
to find these images, whether they're stylistic, not like flip art, things like that?
I'm a real big fan of paying for images because I had a client that got a lawyer letter one time and they excuse me, gave me a photo to use and I did not ask them where it came from and it came from Google and it was copyrighted and they had to pay $380 for 3 months that they used that image and they were not allowed to use it after they paid that. So you can use free resources. There are a few of them that are out there. Pixels, I think is one. Pexels, there we go.
P-E-X-E-L-S.
That's a good one, and then there's also another one that's Pixabay is a good one too.
Pixabay is Pixabeay.
And there's another one. I'll try to look it up for during the session. There's a third one that's also very good. That is, it's people taking real photos. So it's not like, you know, a guy in a lab coat with a beaker.
Wix also had a really nice feature where you can actually right from within Wix, you can purchase great stock photos to use on your
Did
site.
you use Getty or Shutterstock?
I think it was Getty.
Yeah, so Squarespace also, a lot of these
Yeah.
companies have,
Yeah.
you know, integrations.
But they were really cheap. They were like $3
Yeah.
versus, you know, don't spend like $8 on a picture. That's
No.
ridiculous. You know,
$10
three,
max.
3, 4, 5 even, like that's what that was my limit. Also, be very careful when you're uploading these images, compress them first before you put them on. So my like major big mistake, you know, to go to the site at first, I didn't do that, and my site was crawling. And I had so many images on it, and all of them were the full resolution. So
Size and appropriate.
yes.
Yeah.
So make sure they're correct size, and you can just like Google image compressor. There's these free sites. You upload the image, it'll compress it down to like 90% of what it was. Looks the same, looks beautiful. You have that file, and it's way smaller, and it will make your site a lot faster.
I use for multiple images for batch compression. I use Optimizilla. They can do up to 20 images for free.
I think I use that too. Yeah.
It's a great free service. I recommend it all the time. And yeah, if you get an image that's 5,000 by 3,000, you have to shrink it first and then optimize it, then shrink it.
You could use Photoshop and do them in a batch as well if you're familiar with Photoshop.
Yeah.
That's, you know,
Most people I work with do not have access to it, so my recommendations
It's
is
just
generally the
simple.
free thing that you can find online. But yeah, Photoshop is a great way to do it.
And your question?
Yeah.
If you have different, you know, different pages for like children's room, for friends, for board, for, do you find that's too much, having too many pages? I mean, 'cause a lot of people don't go to our gallery or they just go to children's, you know, so how do you?
Sometimes there's stuff that you need to have
Yeah.
on your website.
Even if no one's using
As
it.
long as it's just not like right in front, like as long as you don't have 20 different buttons on your home page for all these things, it's fine.
Yeah.
So like your friends are going to want a page on
You have
on
to
your
put friends
website,
in.
your
You
gallery's
have to.
going to want a page. There are specific things that you need to include, and like you need a spot for your ebooks, so there becomes like a whole list of things that you have to
Do you
keep
find
on
that
there.
people go to, you know, majority?
No.
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 No, it's
But they need-
But you
80-20.
gotta have it,
No.
yeah.
But you have.
You gotta have those politics, you gotta have them.
Yeah, there are certain pages you have to have, and do not add everything all to one page. It looks terrible, and it's even less likely that anyone's going to use that information.
like bulletin board kind
Yeah,
of thing.
don't do that.
Yeah, I recommend having an individual page for like
Each thing.
has a simple concept,
Logically.
and just keep maybe if you can a little spreadsheet or something like that that just has a little inventory of it, just so you keep it under control and it doesn't turn into like 100 pages over years. But if you're just mindful of how many pages do I have in the background.
I would say that's key. We created a spreadsheet so we knew what things were on each page because we were doing it ourselves, right? So we moved things around too. So when you go to make updates, you have to know where things were. Like you might have two places which go to your calendar. What if your calendar URL changes? You have to make sure you know where things are and you keep them updated.
Well, if your calendar URL changes, make sure you redirect that old URL.
Right,
to your
right.
URL as well.
But, you know, you just don't want, the worst thing is to get like a bad link or a broken link, or like I go to a photo gallery and I see only photos from 2009. It's better not to have that on there, right? Like I need updated information. So if you keep a list of yourself, for yourself, and you know what's on there, you can keep it updated much easier.
Yes, John.
Kind of ties into the continuity thing you were talking about before too. If people leave a position, just the previous position that I held at a different library, we were finding pages like all over the place, stuff that we didn't even know existed in it.
Orphan pages. That's
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people were, you know, I remember one time a board member emailed us like they'd been going to the same link for like 6 years and finding this information that was just so old. Yeah, and it just, so yeah, it's crucial not to do that, I think.
Yeah.
It can create a lot of problems.
With WordPress, I think it's easier because there's a pages section, so it kind of has all that information in it. It has the descriptions,
Yeah.
and also you can back that stuff up, so you don't really have to worry about the Excel. But it's also good best practices to have that Excel sheet, just that way you know if it makes you feel better, do it, you know?
Even then though, people on staff are not necessarily going past like the 3 pages they update.
Yeah.
They're looking at the 3 or 4 that they update, and everything else just might as well not even exist.
Yeah.
In our
We
minds.
do the same thing.
Yeah.
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 That's the nature.
We're gonna take 3 more questions. Everyone on the panel is going to be here after the panel is over, so you're welcome to ask them individually. And then we want to give you guys the opportunity to get some hands-on experience working with stuff. So Catherine, you had a question?
I was going to direct this to Ben and John. What Buckles libraries have you designed websites for?
Glen Rock and Leonia. Yeah.
I've done Wallington, Garfield, Park Ridge, Saddlebrook, Paramus. Wallington, Garfield. I'm currently doing Westwood. I think that may be all of them. I may have forgotten one.
It's okay.
Yeah, those are,
Thank you.
that's who I've worked with.
In the back, yep.
Thank you. I have a question about ADA compliance as well as, I guess, usability for the website. Are there any themes or plugins that I should be using in WordPress to make the keyboard more accessible for keyboard-only users?
Yeah.
And the second question that I have, again about accessibility, we have a very large Korean population at Fort Lee and we have a very large Chinese population at Fort Lee. Currently there are links at the bottom of our websites for 2 different versions basically of our website. They're not mirrored to our regular website. Is this best practice or should we try to standardize everything and translate from there?
Those are 2 very different questions. The first one about, let's talk about ADA compliance because that's an important one. I don't know if you guys know what he's talking about. Sometimes if a person is, let's say, paralyzed and they only have, use of one hand or something, they can only go through a website using a keyboard. So you have to make sure that if they are using that keyboard, they can actually, scroll through the page. There isn't a specific plugin that I would tell you to use on that. That's something that you really have to research. Also, plugins aren't always compatible with different themes, so it really depends on the theme you're using. Hopefully it should be compatible.
If you're using a modern,
it should do it on its
well-built
own.
theme, it should be compatible with most plugins. It would be the plugin's fault if you're using a good theme.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't want to use that plugin anyway.
Yeah. Plugins, by the way, let's talk about plugins for 2 seconds. Plugins, if you're going to have malicious content on your website, I think 80% of the time it happens through a plugin that either wasn't updated, no longer supported by the person who developed it, or just isn't working properly for some reason, or just isn't compatible with the theme. So when you are using a plugin, make sure, just like the theme, it's been around for a while. When was the last time they updated it? How many downloads does it have? Read the review, for sure read the reviews. Read the most recent reviews for anything you're about to purchase, because you'll see, hey, I wrote something to you 2 weeks ago, nobody's gotten back to me. You want to steer clear with that. It's the Wild West out there. Anybody can make a plugin, anyone can make a theme, so you have to do your due diligence before you buy something.
And this is why I don't recommend WordPress if you're going onto the do-it-yourself model. If you're doing it yourself, I really do not recommend WordPress.
There's a huge learning curve there, and there's so much margin for error. You can really mess something up, and it's going to take you a lot longer than if you're using drag and drop or hiring somebody.
And you can break the site.
Yeah.
You can break things.
You can break it to the point where you cannot log into it. You have to go to your cPanel to get in, or your PHP-MyAdmin or something like that.
And if you are using WordPress, make sure you're using a host that backs up the site every day.
Yeah.
That's 100%. You have to.
Don't be scared, it's fun.
Well, just to scare you a little bit, again, in a previous position, first day I started working there, WordPress plugin, the site was being redirected to porn. So literally within 2 hours of me starting a new job, we got a call from the mayor that the website was being redirected to porn. And that was because of a WordPress plugin that had not been updated.
Edgewater is another one that I've done. That was one of the reason I say that is because their site had gotten hacked. They were using a company, I don't remember, maybe it's Awesome Library Services or something. I think a couple of people have had trouble with them. So she called me on a Saturday and she's like, nobody can get to my site, it's hacked, something is wrong with it. So
were they using WordPress?
They were using
They used Drupal,
I think they were using Drupal.
Because I worked with them before too.
And so I had to get them like a new site. Luckily I had all the buckles, because I worked with other buckles, I had a template that I could use.
So within like 3 days, I had a new site for them. But yes, it does happen where stuff gets hacked. That's why you need a backup. Backup always.
What should you expect from your host service provider in the way of security? Because that did happen in our library, so. And now that's
Security is
really
like,
bad
it's like better.
experience.
You know, you have to keep the plugins updated. You have to check the site. There's malware scans that a lot, like my hosting provider that I use exclusively, does malware scans on the site daily, and they back up the site every day. Something does happen.
And if you're using something like
And have
Wix
a
or
local backup.
Squarespace, they're going, that's all built into the service. So
They're hosting it for you.
they have the hosting and the protective, whatever stuff.
Although they get hacked as
It's a
well.
technical term, the protected whatever stuff. Yeah, when you are purchasing hosting, make sure that, I like it when they provide an SSL certificate. That's always nice. Make sure you have enough space for your website, because some old host providers are like, oh, you have like 2 gigabytes, and that may not be enough for you.
They may limit traffic as well.
That's
Probably not a concern for most libraries.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
I mean, some websites have a lot of traffic.
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, that's Sussex County is almost 100,000.
Yeah, so that's a lot. You want to make sure that, that's why knowing what your standard traffic pattern from before is crucial. That's why looking at the Google Analytics is important, because if you know, hey, we're only getting like 1,000, 2,000 people a month, we don't need, you know, Bluehost or something like that, or like
1,000 would be good for a lot of library websites.
What was that?
1,000 would be good for a lot of the library
Yes,
websites.
that's great. Good goal to try to obtain.
Yes.
But you also want to make sure, I find it's good to be able to call somebody, because if you are angry, you want to yell at somebody, chat just doesn't do it. You know, you got to be able to call them and say, hey, what the heck is going on here? Calling them is always important. Reviews are great. One host provider that I do not like using is just one-on-one hosting, just because the way that their servers are set up is generally different than most, like their Apache servers are just weird, and I've run into issues on every website I've launched for one-on-one. And it works on every other server, then we moved over to one-on-one issues. And then like, oh, you didn't want us to limit your bandwidth? Well, increase it. Like, why is that not the default? Why is this happening? So you have to be able to communicate effectively. And in terms of cost per month, you should probably expect to spend, especially for an introductory rate, around $4 to $5 per month. And then the average per month is probably going to go up to anywhere between $7 and $15 per month. You can also pay a little bit less if you bulk order the amount of years of hosting that you're going to be getting, so something to think about.
A company that I'm a big fan of, if you're going to build a WordPress site on your own, is SiteGround.
Oh yeah, we use them too. They're great.
I use them for everything, and their customer support is the best.
Yeah, they get that really quickly.
If you do have some sort of malware, they will scan the site for you and find it and get it and get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because it's most likely at some point going to happen.
Yeah. Every WordPress website, you're going to
At
run
some
into
point,
it.
you're going to get malware on your site.
I always say it's not a question of if, it is a question of when.
And as a developer, if you hire a developer other than me or Ben, and they tell you that it's 100% secure, don't use them because it's not true.
Run the other way. That was my biggest concern. So years ago, I had somebody build a website for me before I started building websites on my own. And at no point, there was a WordPress website, he did not mention updates, security, any of that. And then 3 months later, when my site breaks and I reach out to him, nowhere to be found. I'm sure if anybody's built a website before or has worked with developers, that can sometimes happen. That's why we're working with somebody who's reputable, who's been around for a long time, where this is their only job. They're not doing this on the side. They're not, you know, a intern out of college. Sorry, just throwing in a little bit of shade there. Literally, that just happened. We were working with a client. We're like, oh, we're going to have, you know, Anthony do it, and then Anthony went away. And they were halfway done with the project, and they're like, okay, we need your help now. And it's like a contractor coming in. We're like, I have no idea what he was doing here. So you have to kind of start from the beginning, which is not great. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question about hosting.
So at this point, thank you panelists. All of their contact information is on your handout, so if you want to get in touch with anybody individually, you can via email. At this point, we have some laptops set up against the walls if you did not bring a laptop with you. If you did, you are welcome to set it up. We can also move tables and chairs around, and we really want you to start getting some hands-on experience, if you want to try to start creating a website, if one of these posts sounded particularly interesting to you, because now we have a live audience here to help you out. So make sure you fill out your evaluations, please, and hand them back to Joseph. And that's all I got right now. So.